Hello everyone, it's Mrs. Bennett-Morgenstern, and this is the second half of the videos on sculpture, three-dimensional art. Again, an introductory portion, because it, again, is the biggest field in art, is three-dimensional art. Last time we talked about relief work and bas-relief, where the artwork is on a background or a surface and it's popping up very, very slightly in bas-relief and is still attached, even though it might pop up quite a ways in other types of relief. So today we're going to move on to freestanding three-dimensional art. And I was very lucky as an art teacher to be able to study this specifically in college. When I was growing up, this is pretty much all I did because just didn't have your standard art supplies. I think watercolor and 3D, that was about it. So what I'm going to go through first is just, once again, some of the important aspects of creating a piece of freestanding three-dimensional art. And obviously the first definition, freestanding. That means that it is truly three-dimensional in that you can walk around it. Now, it may have a base, it may be on a pedestal, it may be attached to something, but in and of itself, as a piece of artwork, you can physically walk around it, or you can pick it up and hold all parts of it. And as we go through, you'll see what I mean. Just to review some other vocabulary words, kind of important for this section is the functional and non-functional. Okay, so I'm going to be doing some examples of functional freestanding and non-functional freestanding. The functional art has practical use. A non-functional piece of art, it has more of an aesthetic purpose. And, you know, that's very, very simple definition. And remember that most sculptures or most three-dimensional art is created by either taking away from a surface, which is subtractive, or adding pieces together or adding to a surface, which is additive. Another important set of vocabulary words is the idea of positive and negative space. Now, throughout your years of taking art, you hear a lot about this in terms of doing a painting or a drawing or something on canvas. But because of space limitations, you just can't store a lot of 3D art in a classroom, they don't talk about it too much in terms of three-dimensional art, but it's really important. So positive space in 3D is the object itself and its place in space. So if I set the table and put, you know, the coffee cups down, you know, where do I put them? Where do they belong? So it's not just the cup itself, it's also where I'm putting it. The negative space is the space around the object and any interior space within an object. Okay? And if I make an okay signal with my hand, the negative space is all the space in and between my fingers, and also the space where my fingers are connected on the inside. So what you can see through that hole, okay, is also considered the negative space, and it's very, very important. As I say at the bottom of this, freestanding 3D art has much to do with the space around the object's impact on that space, and how the negative space is changed. It's not just about the object itself. So when you're arranging all your little knickknacks on the shelf, why do you put them where you put them? Why do you arrange the furniture in the room the way that you do? So these are all have to do with positive space, which are the objects themselves, and the negative space, which is the air in the room and how what you're doing is going to impact it. I'm a non-hoarder. I don't have a lot of clutter in the house, or I try not to. So I'm conscious of all the negative space in the house, making sure that, you know, it's kept clear and free of obstructions. Also, because I have a blind dog, doesn't help. So I have some materials I want to show you to help you explain the differences between functional, non-functional, additive, subtractive, and the idea of negative space. So let's start with functional art. So ceramics is always a interesting thing because I don't do ceramics in my art classes because I have a separate ceramics class. It's such a huge field. This is actually an artwork made by a student of mine from 2010 who is now an art teacher in Georgia. It's a beautiful piece of pottery that she made while she was in school. Okay, and it actually has a straw that my husband keeps breaking. So this is a ceramic tube that you can use as a straw. I bet you it will keep something nice and cold if I ever use it. But it's so beautifully done that I just keep it as something to look at. So although it's functional, I use it for non-function. I also went outside in the backyard and I chopped down some reeds that I had left over from a plant that grows back and dies every year. This is from a bush called Amsonia. So it's spelt just like Ansonia, except the N at the beginning is replaced by the letter M. Same spelling otherwise. And I just chopped it up and I made this little container out of it. So it's a functional piece, and all of the spaces in between are the negative space. All of the space around the parts that are poking out is the negative space. And then it sitting on the table creates its own negative space. Another piece of functional work. Then we have basketry. Basketry is a very, very old art form. Predates ceramics. They actually think that ceramics came from basketry. They put clay on the inside of this, and then for some reason it hardened up when it was too close to the fire, and it left the design of the basket on the outside. So I actually made this at school and brought it home because it's a good size. So basketry is a functional, three-dimensional art form. And then we have those art forms that kind of bridge the two areas where they're kind of aesthetic clothing, which I fail at immensely since I never dress up. Clothing is one form of three-dimensional art, and the way that it fits on a person is also an art. I love nice clothing. I just don't see any reason to have any because of my job. But one of the things that I do have a lot of, although you can't see it because of my hair, is I have a lot of jewelry. And jewelry, again, is another very, very old kind of functional art back thousands of years ago. But now we just do it for personal adornment and beauty, although pieces have meaning. And I have a few pieces here. These are earrings that were made by students and given to me. So not only are they pretty and you can wear them, but they have personal meaning. And a lot of non-functional three-dimensional art has personal meaning. Okay, so it's important to the owner and to the artist. I can tell you who the students were who gave me those. These are earrings that belong to my mother. And I don't wear them too often, but they're nice to have because they belong to my mom. This is a ring that I got when I was 16 years old from my parents. And again, I very rarely wear it because it's an opal. It's my birthstone. And opals are very, very fragile. They crack. So because of my job, I don't want to knock it against anything. And for those of you who know me well, I love volcanoes. And the stone inside these earrings I got from Oregon. And Oregon is got volcanoes. And this is a piece of rhyolite. And it's kind of a really pretty green color. So these are meaningful to me because I love volcanoes. I also have a bunch of lava stone jewelry from Iceland, because I went there to look at all the volcanoes. The whole island is a volcano. So those things are personal. They can be religious in nature. So non-functional artwork, sculptures can be religious in nature, and they can also be historic in nature. They can teach us. They can represent things from the past that we need to know and learn, or to remember an important event by. Okay? So, in terms of creating three-dimensional art, pretty much the sky's the limit. And I always like to fall back to my old friend, the corrugated cardboard, because for those of us who've been at home a lot, can't go out, I'm probably getting a lot of things delivered. These are just Amazon boxes. I'm actually going to use a base to do this because I want to protect my table. I'm going to be using hot glue because it's really the best thing to use. It's how I made this little guy. Anytime you have to attach pieces together, okay, you are most likely going to have a hard time with just Elmer's. So if we were in the classroom, you would be using hot glue if we were going to do some three-dimensional art. I have a lot of little glue guns, and definitely is something that I like to do. But you got to be careful because hot glue is hot. All right, so we're going to use a base and put that to the side. I actually have my hot glue gun heating up. You always, always, always want something to put your hot glue gun on because it does drip out as it's heating up, and it will like burn your table, burn a tablecloth, burn you. So you want something underneath it. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular. I just, again, had this old piece of cardboard around. So I'm going to get ready with my base first. And as I'm going along, I'm going to be mentioning the idea of positive and negative space. Now, this is flat, although it is popping up from the surface, so it could be considered relief. This is just going to be the base, so I can move this around. My cord isn't really long enough. It's a little bit awkward. And I'm just going to start. I'm just going to be using kind of basic shapes. Actually, it's better to do it. And I'm going to put this at an odd angle. One great thing about hot glue is that it's pretty sturdy pretty quick. So I'm creating just an odd angle because I want to create some weird negative spaces. So what would really be interesting is when I have students who, when I get around to doing this, they take the box apart, they cut it up into little pieces, and then the first thing they make when they get the hot glue gun is a box. Well, you just had a box. Why are you making a new one? Okay, so I got my hot glue gun, and look at that, already ready to stand on its own. Now I'm going to make a line. And I'm going to put this guy at an odd angle. And it's actually going to hang off the base a little bit. So I only have the base just to make it more portable. So I'm using cardboard, but there are artists that would use wood. They could use steel. You can use plastic. You can use pretty much anything that you can figure out a way to join it together. Sometimes the pieces can be huge. Sometimes the artist may want you to be interactive with the piece, meaning that you can climb all over it. My son and I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art when he turned 21 years old. He just wanted to go down to New York City and just, travel, go all over the place. So we went up onto the roof, and they had like a treehouse an adult treehouse made by a pretty famous artist called Frank Stella. And it basically was something that you could just literally climb in. But it was also a sculpture. So let's get a little different here. I'm gonna put the glue on this odd piece. I could have torn the surface off of the side of the cardboard and expose the corrugation like I did when I was doing the printing, and used that for texture. Another pretty famous artist named David Smith, and I believe he's still alive, he does metallic sculpture of basic shapes, and he leaves them extremely bright and shiny. Okay, let's see if I can get a little tricky here. Put a little dab of glue right there. Yeah. I don't think these are going to stay together very well unless I give them a little help here. So, as I'm building this, and it's an additive sculpture because I'm putting pieces together. As I'm building this sculpture, I am trying to figure out if there's any spaces that you can see through. And if I stand at different angles, you know, if I wanted to walk around this, as I'm building it, I should be checking all the different viewpoints. Standing a little above it, standing a little below it. When I've done this with students in the past, we kind of do a little writing ahead of time just to see if, you know, what would this be made of? This is just a model, okay? This is just a model for something else. What would this be made of if you were going to make it in real life? Would it be made of wood? Would it be made of steel, plastic? Would it be located inside? Would it be located outside? Would you be painting it? Would it have color? Would it be multicolored? Would you write on it? Okay, would you use it as a kind of painting surface for now two-dimensional artwork? It's really, the sky's the limit on 3D. Your 3D art can become what you're using to create your 2D art. Okay, I got one piece left. Let's see. Well, that's interesting. Let's see if I can do that. You can use, you don't necessarily have to have hot glue. You can use other things to join together, like tape, masking tape, duct tape. You can use sticks from the outside. You can use the reed that I have here, the leftover branches from that bush I was telling you about. You can pile rocks on top of each other. That's called a cairn, C-A-I-R-N. I have a couple of those in the yard. So materials are kind of important in terms of whether or not they can be outside. Like wooden sculptures outside, the weather's going to get to them after a while. I mean, you can really, you know, make sure that you protect them with some kind of coating for sure. But eventually, water will be the enemy. It can be your friend, it can be your enemy. But around the house, you can use straws, you can use popsicle sticks, you can use toothpicks with marshmallows and make something. You can use cloth and add to it, make kind of a you know, textural part of it. So, lots of different options when it comes, but the main thing to remember when you're doing beginning three-dimensional art, in terms of freestanding art, functional or non-functional, is its impact on the space around it. Okay, I'm going to take this off of the pedestal. I mean, I want to move this out of the way so I don't knock it over. And if I were doing this in the classroom, I'd definitely be spray painting this. Always fun to take them outside and spray paint them. So, as I turn this, you get different views at different angles. It's a little better without my plaid shirt in the background. Then you can see the negative space. And as you move, look at these interior spaces. How are they changing as I move this around? How is the outside shape changing? Okay. How would I put this on display? Again, is it inside or outside? The space that I put it in matters. Is the space white? Is it painted? What color is it painting? How's that going to interact with the materials that I used? A lot of things to think about. One really kind of famous story is the National Gallery of Art. Alexander Calder, who was a mobile artist, and you all know what a mobile is. It is what you hang over the baby's crib that spins, or people just like to have them in the houses because they're pretty relaxing to look at. You can think of it as a wind chime can be considered a mobile that makes music. But when he was still working, he became very, very famous because his mobiles were really cool. And the National Gallery of Art was being built, and they asked him to build a mobile specifically for the space. And it's really cool because you can go up on the second story of a balcony. You can be below the mobile to look at it, and then you can be upstairs looking across at it as it's moving. And even though his mobiles were made of steel and metal, the slightest breeze would make them go. So I'm assuming there might be a little physics involved with that. So definitely you need to know a lot about the materials that you're using. Okay, that's enough spinning, Mrs. Bennett-Morgenstern. Let's put that down. Okay, so again, hopefully if you have a hot glue gun, or if you have some other way of making a three-dimensional piece of art, this might be a fun thing to try, since so much of what we do in the classroom is two-dimensional. So there's two-dimensional positive space on a flat surface, and then there's three-dimensional positive and negative space. Okay, that's it for today.